Well, good morning, church. You always look good. You look especially good today. And I am grateful to see you all. And I just going to tell you, if you didn't get a card on your way in, then I just don't know how that's possible. I saw Dave and Diane out there just badgering people and beating them over the head to make sure you got a card. In fact, Ginger, my wife, told me that in her Bible, she goes, I think I've got like 4 or 5 of these now. And I'm like, well, good. We're hoping to give you 6 this Sunday. So hopefully you got one. Today's our last day to get these. These are so important, and today is the day. At the end of the service today, it's going to be a special moment. In fact, I believe today is going to be an awesome day as we have, as a church, a defining moment. It's in one of my favorite movies, National Treasure, where Nicolas Cage, who plays the part of Benjamin Gates, has this one scene that you may remember where he's sort of part of this VIP party of people celebrating the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And he makes this, what appears to be this impromptu speech. And he raises his champagne glass and he says, "To high treason." That's what these men were committing to when they signed the Declaration of Independence. Because had we lost the war, which at the time seemed likely, they would have been hanged, beheaded, drawn and quartered, and, oh, my personal favorite, he said, they would have had their entrails cut out and burned. So here's to the men who died doing what was considered wrong in order to do what they knew was right. That's a pretty cool scene that really references a significant moment in our nation's history. And I think back to that moment when the Declaration of Independence was signed and when those men had this courage to do what seemed to be so bold. And had they not done that, had they lost their courage, our nation would have turned out differently, right? Think about today. Instead, you would be driving on the left side of the road. Every day we would stop for tea, right? Our nation would have turned out very differently. Defining moment for our nation. Well, as you saw in the video, 35 years ago was a defining moment for our church when a group of people decided that they were going to prioritize people who were far from God no matter the cost. And in this moment, here we are, in the fall of 2024, hundreds gathered here. I believe we are at another inflection point as a church. Because today, once again, we are going to prioritize people who are far from God, to share Jesus and to build believers. I believe it's a defining moment for you individually and for us as a church. And I even believe that what we do here today will help shape northern Collin County and the greater Collin County and, God willing, missions around the world as we establish a church that will outlive our lifetime in a fast-growing area to reach future generations. So at the end of the message today, we aren't going to apologize. We're going to invite 100% of you to participate, to bring this commitment card and say, I am in reaching the next generations, that I am in people who are far from God. I want to be on mission. Today is that day. And if you call this church your home, I am asking you to participate today because I believe it's a defining moment. Now, if you're a guest here today, I just want to say, I'm glad you're here today, even though you may just feel like, whoa, what did I just walk into? The reality is, I want you to hear our heart, and I want you to know where God is leading us so that you can understand whether or not that's what God is inviting you to be a part of. So this week, we've talked about construction has begun on our new campus. In fact, you can see this picture. It really is on our campus. I guess it could have been a Google shot of anywhere, but that really is on our campus. And what they're doing this week is they're doing a lot of demo work around the property. And this next week, they begin mass grading. And basically, they're working on the parking lot first, which is going to be done by the end of the year. They're going to work on the inside over the next month or two. But as I mentioned last week, the entire project will be done on schedule, if it's on schedule, May the 30th. Now, here's what I just want to say. That means it's 7 months from right now. And I know some of you may be even a little tired because we are in the relocation journey of setting up and tearing down. And somebody told me this morning, they go, they're on the setup tear down team, and they just go, I can't wait until we get in that new place. And I knew what they meant was, I'm kind of tired. Right? I come every day at 7:30, and I'm working, or every Sunday, and they're hitting it, and they're working so hard. And I just want to say that today is one of those days where we're so privileged and honored to get to use this beautiful facility, but we also are tenants of a facility. And it's here where these kids are doing a wonderful play, and as a result, we've readjusted. There's a big stage behind this curtain that you can't see, and so we re-altered things. You saw that on the screen and so forth. I just want to give it up to our setup and teardown team who works really hard, super flexible, no matter what. Yeah. You throw a stage, you throw an entire set on this stage, and they'll work around it and make it happen. I love it. I'm so grateful for them. There's a lot that's happening, though, there at our new campus. A lot is being built. But just know, we aren't the only ones building in the area. I mentioned a few weeks ago that the property right beside us was just purchased by a developer to build 1,000 homes. Well, it was about 2 weeks ago when news broke that one of the largest developments in Collin County history has now begun to be underway. It's a near 2,500-acre development, and it's going to be exactly 1 mile east of our new campus, and it's the Colmena Ranch. It will include 10,000 new homes, several family housing units, and over 1 million square feet of commercial real estate. As we said, we believe God is moving us ahead of the wave. As we continue to learn more and more about the size of the wave, it is incredible, and it is why I continue to say, I believe us establishing this campus in this way, in this place, with the vision that God has given us, is one of the great kingdom opportunities of our lifetime. And I am super excited about it. I know many of you are as well. And yet, if we're really honest, we may also be thinking this. Yeah, but what about me? What about me? I know we're all good Christians, and so we'd never say this out loud, but we may be thinking it. What about me? What about my needs? What about my ministry? What about the thing that I care about? What about me? I know others need Jesus. And I'm so glad to see we're sending people across to other nations. But I want a church to be a certain way that gives me what I like and what I want. And again, as good Christians, we never say these things out loud, but we think these things, don't we? What about me? So let's talk about that today. And as we continue this story that we've been looking at, this incredible life of Abraham, today we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to be looking in our Bibles at Genesis chapter 18. If you've got your Bibles, turn with me there. Abraham is a man who God used to make a profound impact in our world. And he is a man who, in a unique way, has an incredible negotiation with God in the scene we're about to look at. Because what's just happened, to give you context before we jump into this passage, what's just happened is Abraham has just learned that God intended to destroy two nearby cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. And these cities were not only sinful, this is so important, but they were notorious for their cruelty and their oppression of the poor. And Abraham, when he hears what's going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah, he could have said, stinks for those people. I'm good. I'm going to have my promised son. My name's going to be great. I'm going to be the father of a nation. My descendants are going to be more than you can count in the stars. I'm good. Those nearby cities, that's on them. But instead, right out of the gate, in today's part of Abraham's story as we look at it, I want you to see how he reacts and see if it doesn't speak into the season we find ourselves as a church. It says in verse 23, the beginning part of verse 23, it says, then Abraham approached him being God. Abraham approached God. Now, here's what's interesting. It's sort of like an attorney approaching a court bench as a defending attorney, defending a guilty client. Abraham begins to advocate for the people in Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, I don't know about you. I used to think, well, he's pleading for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah because his nephew Lot lives there. So he's really just pleading for his family. But the truth is, based on this negotiation, it's obviously more than that, because he could have just gone directly to God and said, hey, God, before you destroy those two cities, would you spare my family? Would you just spare Lot and his wife and, just the whole family? God, would you just spare them? He doesn't do that. He specifically begins to advocate for the entire communities. Instead, he goes before God and he says, God, I hear what's going to happen. I hear your judgment. But what if, God, I found 50 righteous people in that city? Would you spare them for 50 righteous people? And God plays along and says, sure. And in that moment begins the most famous negotiation in biblical history between Abraham and God. And I want us to pick this up. It begins in verse 27. After God agrees to the 50, you think, okay, Abraham would go searching. But instead, what we know is he comes back to God. In verse 27, Abraham spoke up again. He says, and you can just kind of feel he's got his tail between his legs a little bit. And he goes, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, I realize who I'm speaking to. Though I am nothing but dust and ashes, I realize who I am in light of your sovereignty, God. What if the number of righteous in these two cities is 5 less than 50? Could you move a little bit on that? Could you move down to 45? Would you destroy the whole city just for lack of 5 people? 50, 45, can we do 45? In other words, surely 5 wouldn't make that big of a difference. And Abraham begins his haggling with God like you and I would haggle over a used piece of furniture at a garage sale. And he's taking a risk. Why is he taking a risk? He's taking a risk for people he doesn't even know who are far from God. And by the way, I can't help but just stop and think of you and this season of our church and all that we're going through. It would be easy to go, oh, here's what our church is doing. And though we are excited about what God is miraculously doing, let's just stop as we individual followers of God. How are you doing? Are you praying on behalf of someone else? Are you advocating for someone else? Have you ever prayed for an entire city or county like Abraham is praying for Sodom and Gomorrah? Well, Abraham's negotiations continue. Look at verse 29. Once again, Abraham spoke to God and says, instead of 45, what if only 40 are found there? He said, for the sake of 40, I will not, God said. So verse 30, Abraham continues. He's on a roll. He goes, okay, now may the Lord not be angry. So he's kind of apologetic, but let me speak. What if there are only 30 that are found there? And God's response is the same. Then we get to verse 31. Okay, Abraham says, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 can be found there? God's response is the same. And then here it is in verse 32. May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? And God's response is the same. And you can feel the momentum. Abraham's getting God exactly where he wants him to be. And then it's as if the thing comes to a screeching halt. This conversation has an abrupt turn. In verse 33, when the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and, say these last 3 words with me, Abraham returned home. And you're like, wait, what? That's an unexpected ending to this conversation. It feels like Abraham had God right where he wanted him. He's moving in the direction Abraham wants. Like, what happened? Why did he quit negotiating? Why give up? And so I want us to look at these 2 questions based on what we just read. First, why is Abraham even praying for these 2 cities to begin with? And secondly, why did he stop at 10 and go home? First, we got to start with the first question. Why in the world is Abraham even praying for these people in these cities? When Abraham's got all that he wanted, something is going on in Abraham's heart. Because think about it. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah, they have been unkind to Abraham. They're the ones who kidnapped Lot and made war with Abraham. These have become Abraham's adversaries. Today it would be like a member of the family that might be held hostage by Hamas, asking God to withhold judgment on the Hamas terrorist. In other words, these are clear enemies. Why would I advocate for them? God, I would want you to rescue my family and then take your judgment out and go. But instead, Abraham was advocating for the entire community. Why would he pray for these people? And I believe Abraham teaches us, something about how a person who has received grace lives their life. That those who receive grace must offer grace. Grace doesn't flow to me, it is to flow through me. Grace received is grace shared. Think about it in verse 18, just before what we just read. Genesis chapter 18, verse 18. We see the grace that Abraham received. It says, Abraham, this is God speaking of Abraham, he will surely become a great and powerful nation because of something Abraham did know, because it's a gift from God. And all nations on earth will be blessed through him. You will be a conduit through which grace will flow. Abraham knew his destiny. He knew what God had called him to do. And he never lost sight of this truth. I want you to see this sentence and see if it doesn't apply to your life. This is the truth what Abraham embraced. I am a sinner who received a gift from God that I did not deserve. Now that's a humble place to posture our hearts, isn't it? In fact, would you just say that sentence out loud with me? Maybe it's true aspirationally, but I believe many of us would embrace that truth. Would you just say it with me? I am a sinner who received a gift from God that I did not deserve. Abraham is going to receive a son. He's going to receive descendants. He's going to receive fame. And he's received salvation. We already saw that it was accounted unto him righteousness because he believed, pointing forward to the cross in whom he placed trust that the Messiah would one day come. And it makes sense that Abraham, only in this context, would ask for a similar gift to the people of Sodom and Gomorrah who also did not deserve the gift Abraham was advocating for. He knew that he was an undeserving recipient of God's grace. So let me ask you again, who in your life are you praying receives God's grace? Who undeserving in your life needs the grace of God? Who are you praying for? Who are you advocating for? And then that second question, well then why did Abraham stop at 10? 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10, we got it. Stop and go home? I believe it eventually dawned on Abraham that there was not even one in those cities who was righteous enough to spare the cities from God's judgment. And in that moment, you can feel the weight of the text shift as Abraham ends the negotiation and just returns home. But here's the good news. The story doesn't end there. Because this story leaves a question that only the New Testament will answer. When there was only one who was righteous enough, who came from heaven to earth to spare humanity of God's rightful judgment, and to offer grace to people like me and you who are undeserving, so that we could be seen as righteous in God's eyes, not because of anything we've done, but because of His goodness and love. We owed a price we couldn't pay, so He paid it so that we could be made right in His sight. See, Paul said in the New Testament in Romans, there is none righteous, no, not one. And it finally dawned on Abraham that was true. So Jesus came and died on our behalf. And here we see a parallel between Abraham and Jesus. Abraham advocated for people who were far from God. And Jesus came to earth on behalf of humanity so that we could go free once and for all, because there is finally one righteous who can satisfy God's judgment. This is the beauty of Scripture. These stories underscore the grace-centered message of Scripture. That grace received is grace shared. I just want to say, Church at the Creek, as more and more people move into our county, we have an opportunity to be advocates for more and more people to experience and receive the grace of God, no matter the cost to us. This is what the Apostle Paul said in Romans 1:14. He said that we are debtors and he said, I am obligated to those who are far from God. I must take the grace that I have received to others who've yet to experience. And this is what Abraham did. He teaches us that we exist to pray and sacrifice for others. But let's be honest, we all live busy lives. And it's easy to think, well, I'm a little too busy, or I'm a little too young, or I'm a little too old, or my kids are now grown, or I've been there, done that. That's not for me to do. It's for somebody else to do at this stage. And it's easy to take a pass instead of leaning in. And I have been so challenged this year by a conversation between Jesus and his disciples that took place in Mark chapter 6, where Jesus is about to perform this incredible miracle. But after a long day of ministry, Jesus and the disciples are talking, and they notice there's a crowd of thousands of people who've gathered. And some of you might feel the way the disciples are about to express themselves. When you see the thousands of people who are gathering here in northern Collin County, all of a sudden you go, who are these people? Where did they come from? And why do I have an obligation to them? That's what the disciples felt. Like, who are these people? We've had a long day of ministry. We've been there, done that. The disciples are tired. And so they just expressed that to Jesus in verse 35. Mark 6, verse 35 says, by this time it was late in the day, so the disciples came to Jesus and they said, look, this is a remote place. Look, we took our 6 charter buses out 2 weeks ago, and you may have gone out there and go, hey, this is kind of a remote place, right? Like, I see that it's going to come, it's coming, but for now. And they said, it's already very late. And then they say these 4 words, send the people away. They can go into surrounding counties and villages, go to other people, and by themselves, so they can provide for themselves. The disciples, here's what's fascinating to me. They saw the obvious need. I think at this point, I've tried to paint the picture as clear as I can. I don't know that there's anybody here who doesn't see the need where we're going. The disciples also saw the obvious need. But they're tired. And honestly, who could blame them? It is late in the day. They're physically exhausted. The crowd was unexpected. They're in a remote and unfamiliar place. And in their fatigue, they just want to ignore the needs of this crowd, this time. And honestly, they just want to go home. And maybe that's where you are right now. With the growing community around us, the needs are obvious. And maybe you're tempted to think, well, I'm tired. That's a remote place. I'm unfamiliar with it. And maybe you're tempted, like these disciples, to say, send the people away. Somebody else can give. Somebody else can go. But I'm so challenged because of what Jesus said next in this passage. After the disciples had made their case, Jesus spoke up and he gave this unexpected but crystal clear command. In verse 37, Jesus answered and he said, you give. You give them something to eat. In other words, I know it's late, I know this is remote, I know it's inconvenience, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to cater these next few hours. I want you to cater to the needs of the crowd, of these people who are far from God. Why? Well, Jesus has already made it clear. If you think 4 chapters earlier, in Mark chapter 2, Jesus has already made his heart crystal clear. Jesus has already said, look, I've not come for the righteous, but for the unrighteous. I've not come for the healthy, I've come for the sick. He's made it clear that he has left heaven and earth, not for religious folks, not for folks who are trying to go deeper, but for people who need a rescuer. And he came to be that rescuer, that he caters to the needs of those who are far from him, because Jesus knows how long eternity is. And I just want to say, if you're here and you're not a Jesus follower, maybe you sometimes feel like you're on the fringe of this thing called Christianity and you're looking in. I think you'll be happy to know that when Jesus sees you, just like when he saw this crowd in verse 32, 33, and 34, he immediately had compassion on them. When Jesus sees you, he has love and compassion for you. But it's the disciples, people like me and you, who naturally saw the crowd as an inconvenience. And you know what they did? They did what I would do. They started talking about how much this is going to cost them. Like, oh my goodness. Look what they said in the next verse. It says, and so they said to Jesus, look, that would take more than half a year's wages. I love how real these guys are. That's exactly what I would think. How much is this going to cost me? And then they said, are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? You can't blame these guys. And then Jesus does what only Jesus can do. And he begins to perform a miracle. And he sends them out to find a little boy who happened to bring his lunch that day. In verse 37, the last part of it says, and how many loaves do you have? Jesus is asking, go and see. And when they found this little boy, they said, here he is. We got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. What good is that in light of this crowd? This boy simply said, you can have it all. This is all I've got, but you can have it all. And what follows next is one of the great miracles in the New Testament, where Jesus fed 5,000 people. And 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it. And the disciples were this close to missing it all because they wanted the people sent away. But Jesus wanted them to cater to the needs of the people who were far from him. This is the heart of our Savior. Jesus said, I have come to seek and to save the lost. I love this quote by David Platt where he says, every saved person this side of heaven owes the gospel to every unsaved person this side of hell. So back to our original question. What about me? What about me? What about what I want? What about what I need? And I just want to encourage you, what you already know, what you already believe. We exist to give grace. Grace we've received, grace we haven't earned. And those who have received grace must offer grace. And I believe here at Church at the Creek, one of the things that we fundamentally believe is that when we prioritize the lost, we reflect the heart of God. And I just want to say again, that's what I love about each of you, about our church. It is one of the things that I see over and over again, and I was reminded of it again last Sunday, when someone who had been attending our church for 3 years, who wasn't raised in church, who doesn't know the Bible stories, last Sunday, she surrendered her life to Jesus. And she said it was because many of you have helped create a place where she felt welcomed and she could belong while she wrestled with faith, and God took her from belonging to belief. And I just want to say, if that's you here today, and you're on the fringe, you're looking, you're checking it out, maybe somebody bribed you with lunch today and you're here, I am just so grateful that you're here. And I want you to know you don't have to be in a hurry. You can just keep coming and you can keep asking your questions. You can keep wrestling with your faith. We want this to be a place where you can belong. And if you want to get to the heart of who we are and what we're about as a church, I just want you to know that we are externally focused. In fact, I'll just say it this way. All churches care about the lost, but we cater to lost people. In other words, we want you to bring your friends. We want you to bring your family. We want you to bring your coworkers, people who don't know the Bible stories, people who have been hurt by the church, people who have questions about the integrity of the church. We want them to be invited here so that we can wrestle with issues of faith and they can know that ultimately all of our hope is found in Jesus and Jesus alone. And this is a place where we not only care about the lost, but we will cater to the lost because we believe ultimately people becoming believers, followers of Jesus Christ, is what is most eternally significant. We want to share Jesus and then build believers. And we promise to do our very best to create a service with those that you will bring in mind, and a service that ultimately points people to Jesus. I love what our founding pastor, PG, has said. It was one of the first sermons I heard him speak 3.5, 4 years ago, when he said, as long as there's one person lost in Collin County, guess what? We're going after them. And we continue to do that. That continues to be the heartbeat of our church. And let me just say, that is why we are building a new campus. That is why we are asking you to financially donate toward that campus for people who don't know Jesus yet. It is why, though I am excited about the new campus, it isn't about the building, the property, or any of the features. It's about the changed lives that will happen there on that property. It's about the people who will go from being lost to being found, who will grow in their faith and then join us on mission and going after people who don't yet know Jesus. Because once we've received grace, we will offer grace. Let me ask you again, who in your life needs grace? Who is someone far from God that you're advocating for? Listen, I love that God invites us to haggle with Him on behalf of other people, on behalf of other communities. But who are you praying for? In fact, if you thought back over the last week, if all your prayers had been answered, would anyone other than you be better off? Who are you advocating for? Who are you praying for? I believe we are in a season, church, that matters. I believe it can change the trajectory not only of our church and of our lives and our family, but our greater community. And that leads me to our commitment card that you would have received on your way in today. If you want to go ahead and get that now, I want to talk you through it just for a second as we come to the close here today. Some of you may be thinking, well, you know what? I'm not in a place to really make a significant impact, and I totally get that. That's between you and the Lord, and you know what that looks like for you, what you can or can't do in this season. But one of the things I want to show you is this graphic that shows you how much monthly giving can accumulate over a 36-month period. We've shown this for a few weeks. We just want to continue to show that that actually accumulates and makes a significant impact. And some of you today, this is what I love about moments like this, it's been 8 or 9 years since our church has done a building campaign. This is such a significant moment. And for some of us here today, you are going to give to our church for the very first time. And that is such a significant step of faith for you, and I am so happy for you, so excited that you're taking that step. For some of you who are here, you're going from giving from your excess to actually to the point of sacrifice to give your first and best to God. And I'm so excited about the step that you're taking. But what I want to say to all of us is our prayer is that 100% of us would participate. Because at the end of the day, God isn't even trying to build a building. He can do that on His own. But He is trying to build our faith. And this is one of the ways that our faith gets built. Now, if you're a guest today, I'm just grateful that you're here. And I just want you to know this is the mission that we are on as a church. And we invite you to join us on that mission. So here's what we're going to do logistically. If you've got your card, if you'll just take those out right now. What we're going to do today to end the service is a little bit unique. We're actually going to have a moment where you can come forward and take your card and drop it in one of these 4 boxes. Now, some of you have already turned your cards in. And I'm like, way to go. You are so ahead of schedule. You're the kind of people I love to work with. You're ahead and you're ready to go. But you were also given a card on the way in. You may just want to write on that card, I've already given. And you still get to come up here and participate. But I'd also encourage you to write on that card someone you're praying for. And whether you can give financially or not, that you might just write down a name of someone who needs God's grace in your life. And then we want to invite you to come and drop that card into one of these 4 boxes at the end of each of these 4 aisles. And then the worship team's going to play a song. And then I'm going to come back up and I'm just going to pray over all the names. I'm going to pray over all the commitments. I'm going to pray over all the sacrifice that each of you are making on behalf of those who aren't here, of those who don't know Jesus. We take this step together today, church. It's a significant step. So, I believe this is our moment. This is a defining moment. And so I just want you to know if you're here today to take a few minutes, maybe you're even here with your spouse and you want to take a couple minutes to talk, and then you want to write out what you want to commit. You want to write down a name of someone that you're praying for. And as the band plays, you'll have a couple of minutes, and when you're ready, come forward and drop your card off. And then at the end, I'm going to come back up and I'm going to pray over all the commitments, over all the names, and then we'll dismiss together. But this is our moment, church. Let's participate in God's mission, just like Abraham, on behalf of others that we don't even know, because we are recipients of undeserved grace. May God and God alone be glorified as we take this step together. Take a couple of minutes, come forward when you're ready, and drop your card off in one of these boxes.
We've seen the reminders of your faithfulness, marking our journeys and guiding our steps. You make a way when the road seems to end. For where we are going, you've already been. Where we are going, you've already been. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. Oh, and give us your peace and silence our fear. For you are the shepherd who's led us here. You're calling us deeper to where you are. When we surrender, adventure starts. Oh yes, when we surrender, adventure starts. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. Oh, you're not finished yet. So this is our prayer together. Lord, do it again. Would you continue to work in and through us? So do it again. Do it again. I know it's not done. This isn't the end. Do it again. Do it again. There's more to your heart. And I've got more to give. So do it again. Do it again. I know it's not done. This isn't the end. Do it again. Yes, Lord, do it again. There's more to your story. I've got more to give. Do it again. Do it again. 'Cause I know it's not done. This isn't the end. Do it again. Oh, do it again. There's more to your heart. I've got more to give. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. No, you're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. You're not finished yet with us. You're not finished yet. So do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Well, I know it's not done. This isn't the end. Do it again. Do it again. There's more to your story. I've got more to give. Do it again. Do it again. Well, I know it's not done. This isn't the end. Do it again. Oh, do it again. There's more to your heart. I've got more to give. Do it again. And again. And again.
That God isn't finished with us yet. We celebrate what He's done in the past. We know there's more to come. And I'll just be honest with you, how it moves me, maybe it moves you to know there are so many of you who are in on God's mission. And just to watch you come forward in droves like that and say, I'm in, I'm participating, whether I'm praying for someone, I'm committing financially. Isn't it exciting to know you aren't in this alone, that we are in this together, and that we are not only recipients of His grace, but we want to be distributors of His grace together. I just want to pray as we close today. God, we thank you so much because what we recognize that in all of our lives, there are people who don't yet know you. People that they aren't just a distant name. They're someone that we deeply love and care about. And God, we know that your Son Jesus is the hope of this world. And God, the greatest investment we can make is to share your grace with others. And these boxes are now full of names that we are going to be advocating for and praying for. These boxes are full of commitments that we commit to be used for your glory, to be used for sharing Jesus with people who don't yet know you. God, may you and you alone be glorified. May people who don't even know we're coming, who may not even know they're coming to this area, come to know you. And God, we just commit the future to you. We know we're under your hand, and we can't wait to see what you have next because we know that you're not finished yet. May you be glorified through what we do together as a church. In Jesus' name alone I pray. And all of God's people said, amen. God bless you. Have a great week.